college football playoff is nearly here, and hey, there's 12 teams this year. That's 3 times the number of teams of last year and 6 times the number of teams in 2013. How the heck are you supposed to remember all these teams? Well, fear not. Here's your guide to every single team in the college football playoff in about 12 minutes. Let's start with the 12th-seeded Clemson Tigers. They entered the playoff as the only 3-loss team, but knocked off SMU on a 56-yard game-winning field goal in the ACC Championship to earn an automatic playoff bid. Their head coach, Vannini, is no stranger to the playoff. He's just one of 2 active coaches with a national championship. The offense is led by junior quarterback Cade Klubnik, who's thrown for more than 3,300 yards and has 40 total touchdowns. And his top 2 targets are both true freshman wide receivers, the speedy Bryant Wesco Jr. and Antonio Williams. The Tigers' defense is led by defensive lineman TJ Parker, whose 11 sacks are the 7th most in college football. Clemson's secondary might be their weakest unit. They've allowed 21 passing touchdowns this season, which ranks 95th in the nation. Clemson plays the 5th-seeded Texas Longhorns in the first round on December 21st in Austin. The team that lost to Clemson in the ACC Championship, 11th-seeded SMU, might be one of the season's best stories. This is their first season in the Atlantic Coast Conference, and it's been almost 40 years since their program was temporarily shut down for paying players, which is now legal. Head coach Rhett Lashley's decision to switch to quarterback Kevin Jennings early in the season turned out to be, well, a money move. Jennings enters the first round with 27 total touchdowns. He moves outside of the pocket often and makes some impressive off-schedule plays to guys like running back Rashard Smith, an ex-wide receiver turned running back who's accounted for more than 1,500 total yards this season. As good as Jennings, Smith, and Lashley's offense is, they're prone to turning the ball over. Their 21 turnovers rank 107th in the nation, but don't overlook that defense and a very stout front. The Ponies will play 6th-seeded Penn State on December 21st in State College. Now on to the team that might be college football's best story this year, the 10th-seeded Indiana Hoosiers. This is the losingest team in college football history. But first-year coach Curt Cignetti arrived talking a big game and told the doubters to, quote, Google me. In 1 year, he's turned around an Indiana program whose best season was a 9-win year in 1965 to an 11-win team basically overnight. Cignetti added 14 key transfers from his previous school, James Madison, in the offseason, and quarterback Curtis Rourke from Ohio. Rourke was the 2022 MAC Player of the Year at Ohio, but tore his ACL at the end of that season. Now he's leading the 2nd-ranked scoring offense at Indiana. He's got one of the best touchdown-to-interception ratios in the country at 27 touchdowns to just 4 interceptions. Indiana defense coordinator Bryant Haynes has put together a strong defense headlined by Amari Farrell and Mikhail Kamara, who racked up 10 sacks in the regular season. The biggest red flag for the Hoosiers is they haven't won a game against a ranked opponent this year. Their only ranked matchup was against Ohio State, and well, it didn't go great. Indiana takes on the 7th-seeded Notre Dame Fighting Irish on December 20th in South Bend. Next up is the SEC and 9th-seeded Tennessee. The Volunteers had a huge win against Alabama in the middle of the season, but that was their only top 25 win this year. And aside from getting pummeled by Georgia, they sort of coasted into this year's field with ease. First-year quarterback Nico Iamaleava had an up-and-down first season, but he finished the regular season with 8 touchdown passes in the last 2 games. Head coach Josh Heupel is an offensive guy, but the defense is the calling card here. Their 4th-ranked scoring defense only allowed 13 points per game in the regular season, and edge rusher James Pierce Jr. is projected as one of the top picks in the upcoming NFL draft. The Volunteers travel to play Ohio State, the next team on our list, on December 20th. Ohio State entered the year with national championship expectations, but those expectations have been met with disappointment so far. Ohio State spent reportedly more than $20 million in NIL in this year's roster, retaining 15 starters from last year's team and adding transfer portal players like quarterback Will Howard, running back Quinshon Judkins, and others. But those investments haven't really paid off yet. Head coach Ryan Day is really under the gun in a make-it-or-break-it playoff, and the embarrassing season finale loss to hated rival Michigan certainly didn't help matters. He was hoping that new offensive coordinator Chip Kelly, the former NFL and UCLA head coach, would right the ship on offense, but Ohio State is 36th nationally in yards per game and only 16th in scoring. The defense is loaded with talent, with linebacker Jack Sawyer, safety Caleb Downs, and a loaded defensive front. they will be needed to slow down Tennessee star running back Dylan Sampson. South Bend, Indiana is home to the 7th-seeded playoff team, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. The 11-win Irish looked doomed early in the year after a shocking loss to Northern Illinois at home, nearly ending their playoff hopes right out of the gate. Despite a couple ugly losses in his career, head coach Marcus Freeman still has a 30-9 record and just signed a new massive contract to stay in South Bend. This battle for Indiana will feature transfer quarterback Riley Leonard and running back Jeremiah with a Y, Love, and offensive coordinator Mike Denbrock, who have run all over teams this season. Notre Dame also sports one of the best defensive units in the country, allowing the third fewest points per game at just 13. Their defensive line is anchored by Xavier Cross and Riley Mills, and safety Xavier Watts is a returning All-American. Indiana will be a battleground when, well, Indiana comes into town. If you like this content, please consider subscribing to our channel. It doesn't cost you anything, and projects like this take time and resources, and subscribing to our shows shows our bosses that we aren't just goofing off on the computer. From Indiana to State College, Pennsylvania, we go to the home of the 6th-seeded Penn State Nittany Lions. The Nittany Lions put up a valiant effort against Oregon in the Big Ten Championship game, but fell short in a close loss, and that's pretty much been Penn State's story in the 11 years under head coach James Franklin. Penn State wins basically every game they're expected to, but they always fall short of winning the big ones. Franklin is 3-19 against top 10 opponents in his career, including 3-10 against Michigan and 1-10 against Ohio State, the biggest Big Ten rivals. One of those 10 losses to Ohio State came this year in Week 10, leaving fans wondering if Franklin is the guy to lead them to a brighter future. The offense looks a lot better this season under new offensive coordinator Andy Kotelnicki. He's unlocked what had been a pretty sluggish offense, with quarterback Drew Aller and running backs Katron Allen and Nick Singleton contributing toward the 4th most plays of 10-plus yards in the country. It's just been a question of consistency in big games for Penn State this season. Maybe they can answer that question at home against SMU. The only returning playoff team from the 2023 college football playoff is the 5th-seeded Texas Longhorns. Entering this year, head coach Steve Sarkisian's Longhorns were viewed as one of the top 3 teams in the country, and while they didn't finish the season too far off from that prognostication, they still left a lot to be desired. They lost to new conference mates Georgia twice, including in the SEC Championship. Quarterback Quinn Ewers has been inconsistent at times, and fans and media alike are curious if Arch Manning, the nephew of Eli and Peyton, will force Sarkisian's hand into playing him over Ewers in the postseason. This is a roster loaded with talent. Wide receiver Isaiah Bond is a former top 50 recruit. True freshman Ryan Wingo is another former 5-star receiver. Left tackle Kelvin Banks Jr. is a projected top NFL draft pick. And the defense is stacked with true freshman edge rusher Colin Simmons, linebacker Anthony Hill Jr., and more. The only first-round game in the South will be at Darrell K. Royal Memorial Stadium in Austin, and it will be rocking when Clemson comes to town. One of the most surprising teams in the playoff is 4th-seeded Arizona State. The city of Tempe should commission a statue for Kenny Dillingham, the native son, the youngest head coach in the playoff field at 34 years young. He was the offensive coordinator at Oregon 2 years ago, then took over his alma mater, which was a dumpster fire. The Sun Devils were dealing with NCAA violations from Herm Edwards' tenure. The athletic director had left as well, to say nothing of the challenges a first-time head coach faces while moving to a new conference in the Big 12. The acquisition of transfer quarterback Sam Levitt from Michigan State and runaway train running back Cam Skadaboo have elevated this team to new heights, winning the Big 12 in their inaugural season. Arizona State is the 4th most penalized team in the playoff, and they just lost their leading receiver Jordan Tyson to injury. Just something to keep in mind when the Sun Devils play the winner of Texas and Clemson on New Year's Day at the Peach Bowl in Atlanta. Ashton Jeanty. I said his name 3 times, so you will remember the best running back in the country. He was a runner-up for the Heisman Trophy. He rips off ridiculous runs, and he's 131 rushing yards away from Barry Sanders' official single-season rushing record of 2,628 yards. Young head coach Spencer Danielson has fielded a good team around Jeanty. Quarterback Maddox Madsen is a talented redshirt sophomore who's thrown for 22 touchdowns, the most in the Mountain West. His teammates on the other side of the ball have racked up 51 sacks this season, the second most in all of college football. Jaden Virgin Morgan leads Boise State with 10 sacks, and teammate Ahmed Hassanin is right behind him. The Broncos' one loss came at the hands of Oregon on a last-second field goal, but there's a path to a rematch if they can beat the winner of Penn State and SMU on December 31st in the Fiesta Bowl. The most complicated team to discuss is the second-seeded Georgia Bulldogs. Their starting quarterback Carson Beck suffered an elbow injury against Texas that left him unable to play for a majority of the second half of the SEC championship game. His availability is unknown. Backup quarterback Gunnar Stockton played well enough to beat the Longhorns, and he likely will start this postseason. Stockton shares the backfield with two talented backs, Trevor Etienne and true freshman Nate Frazier. They have combined for 17 touchdowns this year. The Bulldogs defense has been more bark than bite compared to years past. They've allowed the fourth most plays of 10-plus yards out of the 12 playoff teams. Defense coordinator Glenn Schumann has done a better job in recent weeks of scheming up sacks. UGA is 15th nationally in sacks with 36, and they're led by Butkus Award-winning linebacker Jalen Walker. Georgia faces the winner of Notre Dame and Indiana in the Sugar Bowl on New Year's Day. The Oregon Ducks round out the playoff field with the number 1 seed. Head coach Dan Lanning and the Ducks took the Big Ten by storm, winning the conference title in their first season after coming over from the Pac-12. Quarterback Dylan Gabriel was a Heisman finalist, converting 73% of his throws. And his skill talent includes wide receivers Ted Johnson and Evan Stewart. They had more than 1,400 combined receiving yards and 15 touchdowns. And running backs Jordan James and Noah Whittington accrued more than 1,700 rushing yards and 20 touchdowns. Oregon's defensive line is headlined by Mateo Uiagalelei and Brian Branch, who have 20 of the team's 39 sacks. This team doesn't have a blatant weakness, but they've had some close calls this year, like against Idaho, Boise State, and Wisconsin. Oregon will play the winner of Ohio State and Tennessee on January 1st in the Rose Bowl. If you want more breakdowns of each first-round game, check out our preview and predictions on our channel. If you like this video, please share it with a friend, and a like doesn't hurt either. Let us know in the comments who you think will win the championship. From Chris Vannini, and until Saturday, we will see you in the next video.